At a family event, my son's wife told me, "You're old and stupid. No one listens to you." She poured my tea on the carpet and said, "Clean it up yourself." My son laughed as I sat frozen. My voice cracked as I said, "You'll wish you'd listened when you learn what's hidden in my files." I'm 68 years old. I've lived in the same home in Durham, North Carolina since 1992. My husband, Raymond, passed 6 years ago. We were married for 41 years. Not a perfect marriage. There were fights, sacrifices, but we built a life together. Paid off the mortgage, raised 2 kids. He was a quiet man, but meticulous. A former systems analyst for a defense contractor, if that means anything. He always had contingency plans, folders for everything, labeled boxes in the attic and basement. After he died, I spent a full year going through his things. I found something I wasn't supposed to: files, flash drives, a locked drawer in his home office. I'll get to that later. The point is, I've been holding on to information I never intended to use. Until now. My son David lives in Seattle. He's 36. He used to be kind, thoughtful. He used to call me once a week after his father passed just to check in. Then he met Nicole. She's the kind of woman who never says thank you. The kind who doesn't make eye contact with waitstaff. Always taking, always judging. Thin, sharp-tongued, always on her phone. I knew from the start she didn't like me, but I told myself to give it time. That David would come around. That love could soften her. It didn't. Nicole made it clear I was nothing more than an obstacle between her and David's inheritance. She's never worked a real job in her life. Influencer marketing, whatever that means. She brags about brand deals and followers, but I've never seen her hold down a job longer than 6 months. She talks about branding herself like she's a product. David changed after they got married. He stopped calling. Then when I did call, she'd answer and say, "He's busy, call back later," and hang up. I saw him once in 2022 for exactly 2 hours when they flew in for a wedding. Nicole didn't even come to the funeral when my sister died. When they finally said they'd come for Thanksgiving 2024, I was shocked. I cleaned the house top to bottom, bought the best cuts of meat, baked pies from scratch. Even set the dining table with the crystal I hadn't used since Raymond died. They showed up late. Nicole walked in wearing sunglasses like a movie star, said, "Ugh, smells like old lady in here," and dropped her bag on my couch. David didn't even kiss my cheek. Just said, "Hey, Mom," and followed her to the guest room. I should have said something. I should have told them to leave then and there. But I didn't. I wanted my son back. I kept thinking, maybe if I just held on a little longer, maybe if I just showed them love, they'd remember who I was. That Sunday evening after dinner, I made tea like I always do. I offered everyone a cup. When I handed Nicole hers, she didn't even reach for it. Instead, she looked right at me and said, in front of everyone, "You're old and stupid. No one listens to you." I froze. I felt my ears go hot. The room got quiet, real quiet. I thought I must have misheard. Then she tilted the cup and poured the tea out slowly, intentionally, onto my living room carpet. It wasn't even about the carpet. It was about humiliation. "Clean it up yourself," she said, like I was some servant in my own home. David laughed. That was the part that broke me. My son laughed. He looked right at me and smirked like this was normal. No one else said a word. Elaine looked away. Her husband mumbled something and went back to his phone. Even the grandkids just stared. I was alone in that room full of people I fed, raised, loved. I knelt down to blot the carpet. My knees cracked as I bent. It took everything in me not to cry. Then, without even thinking, I said it. Quiet, but loud enough for them to hear. "You'll wish you'd listened when you learn what's hidden in my files." They thought I was just rambling. Nicole rolled her eyes, called me senile under her breath. David changed the subject. But I wasn't bluffing. Because what they don't know is that Raymond left behind more than a house. He left behind proof. Documents, names, accounts, offshore transactions connected to Nicole's, Brand, and David's silent business partner. Tax fraud, misuse of PPP loans, screenshots of conversations Nicole thought were private. My husband kept everything. Maybe he didn't trust them. Or maybe he saw something in her that I refused to admit. And I've been sitting on it all this time, not wanting to destroy my son's life. But they destroyed something in me that night. Now, I'm done waiting. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, lights off, replaying the moment over and over. Her voice, his laugh, the way no one said a thing. By morning, something inside me had changed. It wasn't anger exactly, it was colder than that. It was clarity. I knew what I needed to do. They were all still asleep when I got dressed, put on my coat, and drove to the storage unit I kept just outside Hillsborough. It wasn't much, just a small unit I rented after Raymond passed to store his boxes of documents, backup drives, and a fireproof safe. When I opened the safe and pulled out the folders, my hands didn't shake this time. I took them all. Everything. There were files with account numbers tied to shell companies in Nicole's name. Images from social media accounts she'd deleted. Screenshots of texts between her and someone named Jay about funneling money from fake sponsorships into offshore crypto wallets. And then there was a thumb drive labeled, "For David, if he ever asks." Raymond must have seen what was coming. Back home, they were getting ready to leave. Nicole was upstairs packing. David sat at the kitchen counter drinking my coffee like nothing had happened. I said, "We need to talk." He didn't even look up from his phone. "Can it wait?" "We're headed to the airport." "No, David," I said. "This is the moment. You've got one chance to listen to me." He rolled his eyes and said, "Mom, if this is about last night." I cut him off. "You married a woman who is using you. I have proof. I've had it for years." He finally looked at me. I slid the folder across the counter. "Your father kept everything. I wasn't going to do anything with it. But after the way she treated me last night, after the way you laughed, I want you to read every single page." He didn't open it, just pushed it back toward me. "Jesus, you're still obsessed with her. Do you know how crazy this is? You've always hated her." I wasn't surprised. Not anymore. So I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo, one Raymond had printed and stored digitally. Nicole and Jay, her hand on his chest, time-stamped 5 months before their wedding. Same Jay from the texts. Same Jay from the wire transfer history. That got his attention. He snatched the phone out of my hand, zoomed in, his face pale. Then, like a switch flipped, he got angry, not at her but at me. "You went through her private life? You've been spying on us." "She was never private, David. She made it public. Raymond was trying to protect you." Nicole came down the stairs then, suitcase in hand. "What's going on?" David held the phone up. "You want to explain this?" Her face didn't change. She looked at me, then at him, then said, "Are you really going to believe your bitter old mother over me?" He stood there frozen. I could see the war behind his eyes. But then, this part I'll never forget, she turned to him and said, "If you trust her more than me, maybe we're done." Just like that. No fear. No hesitation. A threat plain and simple. He didn't say a word. Picked up the folder, grabbed his coat, and walked out the door. Alone. Nicole looked at me with a half smile. "You think you've won?" I didn't answer. Just handed her a manila envelope addressed to the IRS and said, "I made copies." She left. I haven't heard from either of them since. But it's not over. Because what they don't know is that this wasn't just about exposing her. I found something else in Raymond's files. Something with my name on it. Something that changes everything. 3 weeks passed. No calls.
No texts. No epaledi.
David was silent. Nicole wiped her social media clean, deactivated her Instagram, and posted a vague message on her brand site about stepping away for personal growth. I watched it all unfold quietly. Not gloating, just waiting. Because I wasn't done. Not yet. While reviewing the files Raymond left, I came across something I'd missed. It was tucked behind a binder labeled Mutual Holdings. Inside was a signed agreement, dated 2009, notarized. It named me as the sole custodian of a trust fund an account I never knew existed. At first, I thought it was just another retirement account. But this wasn't ordinary. It was set up years before Raymond got sick. The trust held just over $2.3 million in a private investment account in Delaware. The clause said it was to remain untouched unless both of our children proved financial stability and ethical integrity. Those exact words. I had the legal documents. The trust was airtight. If either child demonstrated fraud, deception, or dishonor, they were automatically disqualified. And I had Nicole's fraud in writing. Raymond knew. All those years, he knew something was coming. That's when I made a decision. I contacted an estate lawyer I trust, a woman named Deborah I've known since high school. We drafted a formal review of the trust conditions and documented every piece of evidence: Nicole's fake sponsorships, misuse of funds, and offshore accounts. David's complicity might have been unintentional at first, but the fact that he laughed as his wife humiliated me, that sealed it. Legally, I was now empowered to disinherit David from the trust entirely. Elaine, my daughter, had stayed silent that night. But a few days after Nicole poured that tea and walked out of my house, she called. "Mom."
I should have said something.
I froze.
I'm sorry.
Her voice cracked, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone saw me. I didn't tell her everything yet, but I did ask her one question. If I had the chance to change everything, our future, our family legacy, would you help me do it?
She didn't hesitate. Yes.
Whatever you need. That's when I started the next phase. I created 2 new trusts, one for Elaine and her children, and another for the grandchildren on David's side. Not a penny would go to David or Nicole directly, but I made sure the kids would be safe. I wasn't cruel. I was precise. Then came the part that made it real. I contacted the IRS. I filed a formal whistleblower report with full documentation. Names.
Dates.
Transactions. Nicole's false filings. Misuse of business income. Her real income was almost triple what she declared on her taxes. David's signature was on several of the filings. Whether he understood what he signed, that's for them to argue in court. And as I mailed off the certified envelope, I knew one thing. The real damage wasn't the money. It was this. David would now have to explain to everyone, his friends, his investors, her influencer partners, why the IRS was looking into their finances, why his mother had cut him out of her will, and eventually, why he chose a woman who poured tea on the carpet over the mother who raised him. But this story's not done, because last night, I got an email from someone I didn't expect. Someone who changes everything. It was from Jay. The subject line was, "We need to talk. She's done worse than you know." I stared at the email for a long time before I opened it. Jay had been a name in the files, someone Nicole had exchanged flirtatious and financial messages with, likely her backup plan if things with David went south. I didn't expect to ever hear from him. But there it was, subject. "We need to talk. She's done worse than you know." He left a phone number and said he'd explain everything if I gave him 5 minutes. I called him. Jay was younger than I expected. Late 30s, maybe. Nervous voice, like he didn't want to be caught talking to me. He told me they dated off and on before she met David, and briefly after. But he ended things when he realized she was manipulating more than just her followers. He'd seen her fake brand invoices. He'd helped her inflate numbers once, just once, to close a deal, and now he feared the IRS would come for him, too. But then he said something that made my stomach twist. She's already transferring everything to an alias. She's liquidating. Nicole was running. She knew the net was closing. She was dumping properties, closing accounts, cashing out crypto, and preparing to disappear. He sent me screenshots, new ones. Current transactions. A list of shell corporations under fake names. She was trying to hide assets before the IRS could freeze them. I forwarded everything to my attorney and added it to the whistleblower package already in review. Deborah called me the next morning and said, "You've handed them a career-making case. They're moving." Within 3 weeks, I got word. Nicole's accounts were flagged and frozen. Her tax filings were pulled into full audit. The Department of Treasury opened a fraud investigation. And David? He got subpoenaed. He showed up at my door 2 days after that. Alone. Hollow eyes. No car in the driveway. He must have taken an Uber. He looked like someone pulled the floor out from under him.
Why?
He asked, voice quiet. I didn't invite him in. I stood in the doorway and let him speak. You ruined my life, he said. I looked at him and said, no.
She did.
And you let her.
He started to cry.
He begged. Told me he'd lost his job. His name was trending on Twitter for all the wrong reasons. Friends cut ties. Nicole had vanished. Took her name off their accounts. Drained what little was left. He was left holding the bag. I told him the trust was gone. The will was changed. Elaine and the grandkids were safe, but he was out. And I reminded him what he said when Nicole poured tea on my carpet and called me stupid. You laughed, I said. That's when I buried the last of what I had for you. He said. I didn't know what to do. I froze. You chose her. Over and over. You watched me clean your wife's mess while you smirked. Now clean your own. I shut the door. I didn't slam it. Just closed it slowly. I stood there for a long time after. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, but I also felt finished. That night, I sat in the kitchen with a glass of wine. I pulled out the last letter Raymond ever wrote me, the one marked for when it's time. I hadn't opened it until then. Inside, it said, you always protected everyone. I hope one day you'll protect yourself. If you're reading this, it means you finally did. I'm proud of you. I folded it back up, placed it in the drawer, and turned off the light. Nicole is under federal investigation. David is being audited, sued by former investors, and on the brink of bankruptcy. Elaine and her family are rebuilding their lives, with full access to the trust, my house when I pass, and my blessing. And me? I'm not just someone's mother or widow anymore. I'm the last person they should have underestimated. And now they know it.